Well, welcome to today's episode. Today we've got a very exciting guest, Jadon Montero. So Jadon is Maro's CEO, and he has a deep experience in designing and bringing innovative security solutions to market, including SOAR, EASM, and MDR. Now, Jadon also served as a former product leader at Bitdefender, Census, Rapid7, and ThreatStack, and began his career studying cyber warfare under the first U.S. Director of National Intelligence, John Negroponte. So, Jadon, welcome.
Hey, Mark. Nice to meet you and glad to be here.
Fantastic. And for those of you just joining the podcast, we at Strativa AI help businesses scale their revenue over 12 months using AI. So if you want to learn how to take your business to the next level, make sure to stick around for future episodes. And if you're interested in a free growth consultation, please DM the word growth into the DMs. And so now, Jadon, can you tell us about your journey to Maro and a bit about the company history?
Oh, man. Yeah. I guess I'll start with where you ended on my bio, but just a little bit before that, just before I studied under John Negroponte and also Edward Wittenstein, who is the director of the Jackson Institute at Yale. I was a freshman. And I had initially come into school wanting to study philosophy, actually. And I spent my whole freshman year doing philosophy, literature, and history courses. I just remember feeling...
So did I.
You did? What were you studying? What were you specializing in?
It was just philosophy. I was up in the University of New Hampshire because my dad was actually a dean at Yale. And so I said that I didn't want to go to school where my dad was.
Yeah, that's a great choice from my perspective. I'm curious then if you had a similar experience that I did. So I remember in my first year coming from a public high school in Nevada where I grew up.
Oh, nice.
I was really not sure how to engage with the academic system at all, I would say. I remember leaving sections, which we had no model for this at the high school I went to, feeling like I had no idea what academic rigor looked like. I was used to read a textbook, take a test.
Right.
And the second thing was I really felt disconnected from, I guess, the real. I was starting to feel like, okay, I thought college was the time where you start making an impact on your communities. All the things you've learned up to this point, you use to start making people's lives better. Saying that in retrospect, it's coming off a little like comic book action hero or something like that. But I remember thinking at the time, how do I get closer to the real? And I surely wasn't getting that in my philosophy courses. I went in with a renewed vigor my sophomore year and said, what the hell is happening in computer science? Everyone's excited about this area. I had no idea what was going on at all. And I filled my course load with pure computer science and cybersecurity classes.
Interesting.
And one of my first classes was cryptography. And I took another class about kind of securing sensitive information in a wired world. I think that was the exact course name. And I just remember being immediately hooked. And I guess, the short reasons for that are, number one, in this space, the adversary isn't sleeping. The adversary is always evolving.
Right.
So that feeling of, am I in a field where like the things I'm working on are relevant on a day-to-day basis and I'm always pushed to learn, that felt 100% true. And then the second thing is that, as I'd said, I felt a little disconnected from the real everyday businesses. And today, people like you and me on a daily basis are facing cybersecurity threats like crypto schemes and romance schemes and investment schemes. Like I'm sure you've gotten 5 tests this. Yeah, I'm sure. When's the last time you got a text that said like, hey, I've got a new, altcoin for you to invest in?
Right. Oh, the new altcoin. I haven't gotten that one yet.
Have you gotten the state toll text?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So that one, right, this is a campaign that's been going on for like last year and it's been really successful. So yeah, I guess I was hooked from that moment forward. Started interning for a Boston-based cybersecurity company that you mentioned called ThreatStack. Almost dropped out of school because it was so fun. And then, spent the rest of my career building cyber products. And for me, as I've said, I think the constant evolution of the field is what makes it interesting to me, and never losing sight of the fact of who we're serving. I think you'll find most people in cybersecurity went into it because they kind of they're protectors at heart. They really love the idea that the work that they're doing and the work that I'm doing is making someone's life a little more stress-free. So that's the start. That's at least where I came from, and would love to talk a little bit more about Maro too later.
Yeah, or now, like
when
did Maro start?
Yeah, no, it's So this idea has really been brewing for throughout, I'd say, the latter half of my career, let's say the last like 7 or 8 years. And
Okay.
the idea itself came from being in the trenches. So a lot of the work that I've done in the past, the products that myself and my co-founders have created, it was all to kind of make the job of cybersecurity more efficient. And, for those of you out there wondering what that job is, at large organizations, we have something called a security operations center. And Mark, have you seen a picture of a security operations center, or maybe the movie Hackers or something like
Yeah,
this?
yeah. It's all
Okay.
like totally private.
Totally private, behind the frosted glass, and you see the ICBMs and stuff pinging across the screen, and you have the hackers in hoodies, like that whole thing. Maybe they're a little less like in the real world. They're not so, I guess, like caricaturized. That being said, even if it's cubes or whatever, let's just say that like at a lot of large organizations out there, there's 30 to 50 to maybe hundreds of security practitioners who spend their whole day looking through logs and alerts to see if your organization's been hacked.
Yeah.
And that's a really tough job. I liken it to being in the ER. That's really what it feels like from a stress perspective. And I do think
intense, huh?
super, super. And I don't know if you've ever had the misfortune of ending up in the ER yourself.
I have.
Same here. And that was my only thought was, looking around, it's like, you see people that day in and day out are dealing with that amount of stress and pressure, and it starts to become normal, but it's still a very difficult job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so that's
100%.
the SOC. That's the SOC. And what happens in the SOC, as I said, is we spend tremendous amount of money and time trying to figure out if the organization's been hacked. What was really funny about the SOC from my perspective was a lot of the time, well, let me just say the job of the SOC, as I'd said, is to figure out if we've been hacked. The goal of the SOC is not to Tom Cruise pre-crime style, Minority Report style, say, when's the next crime going to happen and how do I stop it?
Right. Yeah. It's all after the effect.
It's all after the fact.
Yeah.
And so in the SOC, we would get requests all the time, or we would get tickets from users that are saying, like me and you, and we would call our friendly security team and say, hey, I think a phishing email came in. Should I click on the link? Or they would say, hey, my boss, hey, Mark, the CEO sent me an email that said, I got a party in 2 hours, buy me a $500 gift card to Walmart or you're fired. And this is commonplace. This is every day. I would say the vast majority of our interactions with frontline employees would be this kind of interaction. But as I told you before, that's not our job. Our job is not to respond to people. Our job is to find out if we've already been hacked. So what would end up happening is we'd ignore most of these requests, or we try to automate away as much of it as possible. And lo and behold, well, if you had to guess, what happens 2 weeks later after a user submitted one of these tickets?
After they submitted a ticket, it was too late.
And we don't answer. Yeah, we don't answer. What happens 2 weeks later? It's
too late.
They get popped. Yeah, too late. Too late. So this idea stemmed from this exact situation. The idea was, what if we could take away the burden of being a cybersecurity expert from our users themselves before they generate an alert, and then we're like, let's not handle that. So we created Maro, what we call our cognitive security agents. The idea here is,
and when was the creation date?
Last year.
Last
year, started building the product in January.
Okay.
And Maro is really there to act like a constant guide and protector and educator to the employee. So they're not getting in these positions where they need to contact a security team that's already overburdened with so much stuff going on.
Okay, so it's sitting next to or on each user case's operating system?
That's right. That's right. So we basically operate in the browser where 95% of employees' work get done today. And whenever you're in one of those sticky situations like the one I described, you're getting hit up on social media by somebody trying to take over control of your account or steal your credentials, or you're just plain end up on a sketchy site, right? Maro is your guide to say, hey, maybe you should take these actions instead. And we think that's a much better approach to cybersecurity long-term than the model where we send all of your data to a SOC and then we're sifting through it, trying to figure out what happened.
And so is this at the medium-sized business level or enterprise level? How big are the companies that are using Maro?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think these things, obviously, like the use cases that really stand out tend to vary by segment. I'll start with kind of where our thesis was, which is that there are a lot of mid-level organizations and startups, actually, that could benefit from a solution like Maro.
Oh, okay. Even down that small. Okay.
Oh, yeah, small as well. And the reason for that is because one of our core assumptions, and one of the things we believe after being in this industry for so long, is investing in your people as a control is actually one of the cheapest things you can do to make your organization stronger. I remember early on, one of our first customers at a previous startup I worked at, he was working with GitHub when they were small
Okay.
and scaling, and it
Wow.
actually still works with Microsoft today. And he's the one that, told me, like, I think what people really don't understand is that, when you invest in all these different kinds of technologies to keep people safe, if you reserved even a fraction of that and said, let's help our users be that front line. Let's not treat them like liabilities. Let's treat them as assets.
Yeah, that's great.
It can be a lot safer. So we're really targeting these organizations that are looking for how to get a lot done with little, and potentially take a more direct path to cutting down what the industry calls human risk than the solution where it's like, hey, let's pick up all different kinds of technologies and cobble them together and stop the user.
I see. And so company size can really vary quite a bit. And a lot of times, is it that, like, whatever, say there's a company of like with 10 users.
Yeah.
Does each one of their seats talk to the other? Or is it all just based on that one user's experiences?
No, that's a great question. Yeah, I think all of this stuff needs to get coordinated at a company level.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
at some
So
point
what
in
does
the
that
future,
roll up look like?
yeah, that's an awesome question. I think the goal of any basically the goal of any company is really to start to get a handle on their own. We talk about like their policy set, right? Like the documents that when you onboard to a company, you have to sign one time and no one ever looks at again.
Yeah.
There's a smart person behind that policy that's designed that thing, right? And it's tailored to your company. The reason that a policy is important in the first place is because it's tailored to the risks that your business is facing. And oftentimes, as I said, when you sign that policy, that's the last time anyone ever thinks about it. At Maro, we think that really one of our core goals vis-a-vis the business leader, vis-a-vis the security leader, is to say, hey, what if we could make sure at all times that your employees are compliant to your policies, that they're staying in line with your policies? Because it's not something they need to hold in their brains. It's something that we help with, right? It's something that Maro teaches them in the moment. So to answer your question, there's kind of a bidirectional push here. As we learn about risky things that the user is being faced with, for instance, right, a phishing campaign targeting one user, that's not how that works. Usually when they target one user, it's targeting 30 people that work at the company at one time, right?
Mm-hmm. I see.
So we need to roll up information in that direction to help better inform your security team on how to proceed. In the other direction that I was just describing, it's equally important to say, hey, how are the risky behaviors of my organization looking at a kind of more aggregate level? And how is our policy driving and Maro driving that behavior in a more positive direction than yesterday? So yeah, the roll up is absolutely essential, but it definitely happens in those two directions.
Nice. And then so since the beginning of last year, January, I believe, right? What's growth been like? Like, how big is your internal team and what does your customer base look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. So our team is now 10 people. And it's been really rapid. I think we had only 3 people exiting the year last year. So our team's grown a lot of mostly engineering. And a lot of that is because of the way that we've chosen to build Maro has been really focused on embracing some of the newer AI technologies that I'm sure you personally are very well aware of. But, all of our architectures for our different pieces of this product are built the way they are because we chose to prioritize things like privacy, which I guess our world has stopped caring about in the last couple of decades, but we believe is really important. We're definitely looking at stuff like, can we do a lot more local processing to be able to afford people the privacy they deserve as opposed to sending everything to frontier models? And then we're also looking at, like, as I said, local or edge processing. How much of the expertise of a cybersecurity person can we really perform where the user's already working? These are the problems that, like, I think are very, very interesting. And it's why we've spent so much time hiring and spent so much money hiring engineers who really specialize in these areas.
I see. Okay. So you've developed your engineering team quite a bit, it sounds like. And is your staff worldwide or all based in the US?
It is worldwide.
Worldwide. Okay. And your customer base worldwide as well?
No. So our customer base today is in the US.
Okay.
I don't expect that to be forever. And I do think, some of the values alignment that Maro has in terms of really focusing on, again, can cybersecurity be a thing that's done locally to you? It's not
Yeah.
this invasive. It's not this, autocratic big brother surveillance model that we currently have. I think it's
Yeah.
actually really well aligned with some other markets in the world. And as you know, like Germany and the EU largely speaking. So I would not expect that we're domestic forever or for a long time, but we've definitely been targeting US companies to start with.
Got it. Got it. And yeah, like I don't know, like in maybe a number of seats or client, like, customers, like just how big is Maro?
Yeah, well, I'll just talk in terms of like the kinds of groups we're working with.
Sure.
So we currently are approaching the market from a number of different angles. We have a valued partner that has exclusive, well, like basically like a cybersecurity services provider. And that's awesome, right? Because for a product like Maro, to have for a smaller business, sometimes it's really helpful to have somebody administering the product on your behalf. So what's awesome about this group that we work with, Goliath Security Group, is that they do have exclusive access to tens of thousands of insurance brokers in the nation. And we think that's a really, really interesting market because it's highly regulated. And a lot of sensitive data today, if we took a serious stock of where things are, is just being thrown around, basically at will across personal devices, across the web, et cetera. And so we are
Right.
definitely targeting, groups like, insurance brokers, definitely looking at groups that have like independent financial advisors, any groups that kind of have like a lot of frontline knowledge workers where the data they're holding is very sacred, but it's become really commonplace to throw that data into different AI tools or just not really think about like what's sensitive and what's not. That's kind of where we've had our most success. And then, just really briefly outside of that, most recently, we've gathered a lot of enterprise design partners. And what I think maybe has been not surprising, but reaffirming for me and the team at Maro is in the enterprise, what really stands out about a product like ours is a product that treats the user and the potential problem in real time. So there's a lot of security tools, again, like we were talking about earlier, that tend to give you alerts and dashboards and reports. There's not a lot of tools out there that say, before the user submitted the sensitive data or before the user, accidentally revealed the client list to ChatGPT, we told them, please don't do that. Here's your company policy. Here's what you should do instead. Here's a secure file share system. And you don't even see that incident, but we're telling you that we prevented that. That's the thing in the enterprise now where we're like, okay, even there's room for a product like Maro that really is focused on real-time feedback for users.
Right. I love it. And so is Maro also sitting alongside what a company may have for general IT support? Or do you guys do that too?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, actually. So one of our design partners, actually, well, several of them, but I'm thinking of one in particular that works at a very well-known Series A AI company. And what he was telling me is like, hey, look, it's taken us 2 years to get our users acclimated with this bot that, does all of our IT related functions. So is there a way that Maro either works together with this bot or is white labeled or gray labeled or whatever, the terminology is. And I think that's exactly right. Like, our goal isn't to create a net new brand that becomes like, as ubiquitous as the Casper from Snapchat, right? Or the ghost from Snapchat.
Okay, yeah.
I think the goal is, hook into what the kinds of processes where businesses have already made strides in building trust with their users. And then make sure that Maro is providing the right user experiences to push behaviors in the right direction. We don't want to work against ourselves by saying like, hey, you need an IT bot and a security bot and other things. So our longer term roadmap will likely, we don't have ego in kind of the messenger being specifically our cute little fiery guy, Maro.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Good question. Great question.
Okay, wonderful. And what do you feel might be some of the common misconceptions that businesses have when integrating AI into their growth strategies?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I'm looking forward to a lot of back and forth with you. I think, Maro's, we really adopted AI in two major ways. One was, a deep integration of AI into our product strategies.
Yeah.
And then the other side was exploring all of the hullabaloo around AI transforming, workflows that really well, outbound sales, marketing, inbound and outbound, right? And I think well, when we really started to push on creating these engines, these go-to-market engines, and let me just say, let me put the product one aside for a second,
Sure.
because that's its own, behemoth. But I think there was a fair amount of messaging across the web and across LinkedIn saying, do you really need a BDR? Because we now have here, I'll share with you this secret technique and this, N8N workflow, and this is more performant than, 10 BDRs put together. So I think I feel pretty fortunate to have started a company in this time where there's a lot of play. But I'm also curious for your perspective, Mark, because there's a lot of noise right now around what AI can and can't replace. And I think upon going through this process myself, there's been wins and losses in this process, right? There's like, oh, this was really overblown what AI can do here. And in
Yeah.
other areas, it's like, wow, this is really useful. So I would love to ask you as well, like, how are you
Yeah, well,
thinking about
there's definitely been a lot of startups that have failed in the AI space. There's a lot of VC money that's gone into it. I've heard that there's not much VC money around, but where there is, it is for AI.
it? Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of the folks that I've had on this pod so far are in the startup space. But stepping out even further, more generalized, is because it's such a buzz. Some people feel intimidated by it for two different reasons. One is that they're just overwhelmed by it because it's so new, and it says that there's this, like, it can do everything, right? And so they're like, where do I start? What do I do? This sort of thing. And then also, like, just being intimidated where it's like they're scared of it and they've heard like the bad things that are like bound to happen and how it's going to replace everyone. And I think that it's just like any other super big needle that's moved historically as far as technological advancements. It's how you use it and how you embrace it, right? And so, like, with the World Economic Forum's prediction that I want to say, I don't have the stat exactly right, but I think by 2030 they're predicting like 90 million jobs lost because of AI, but yet 170 million gained. And so there's a net positive. And so my message is always, take whatever a baby step is for you, whether it's, you have a small business or if you have a big business and you're thinking about teams and how to implement it across teams, and know that efficiencies absolutely can speed up or create more efficiencies in what you're doing, like all of those repetitive tasks.
Right.
I say, like, just like you were touching on, like a BDR, SDR, even just like a basic voice receptionist, it's maintaining that human alongside of whatever they're doing, whether it's biz dev, sales, or like a receptionist, where the example being, like, in sales, you're always going to need that personal relationship with someone. Right. And like the biz dev, like that person always has to be thinking about what's it going to be like for getting the word of their business out there, or receptionist down to just the minuscule, not minuscule, but like, local plumber down the street, and, or a dentist, any of the local services where someone that walks into their office, they're able to have a better customer experience because that individual is no longer fielding all of the same repetitive phone calls, answering all those facts. And they're able to be like, what brings you into the office today? Here's a cup of water, right? So they're having a better customer experience. Or for the sales or the business stuff, it's the same sort of thing. Like, they're deepening those connections. And so it's those individuals that are actually taking the AI alongside, just like how you have Maro planned or executed out such that it's sitting alongside, it's sitting in a user's platform, and they're interacting with it. And they're not overwhelmed or intimidated, but they're using it. And therefore, they're saving their company time and money because of these hacks being averted. Or the ramifications might be because of it.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think your approach is completely sound. And I guess my follow-up to that comes in two flavors. Like, if we want to scope the question to like, what can anyone do to get into AI? I totally hear what you're saying. And I think I was there last November where I was like, there's limited usefulness coming out of these tools, especially on the coding side. And I just hadn't picked one up in 6 months or something like that. And then suddenly I'm playing around with, the new AI coding tools, and the leap was gargantuan between November
Sure.
and earlier that year, like in the summer or in early in Q1. And I think what you said is 100% right. Like, you want your reaction, you have to force your reaction right now to kind of be, is there another option outside of fight or flight? It's like hug the threat, right? It's like,
Okay.
you
Sure.
don't want to
Sure.
be, I don't think any of us are afforded right now the room to be like, AI is coming and I don't really quite understand how all the math works out. I'm not going to have the time to pick up a machine learning textbook, but play is the most important thing. And this applies at both the consumer
Yeah.
level, or the individual person level, and also at companies. And at the individual level, I think one of the things that I needed to get over was you kind of get nickeled and dimed right now by all the AI companies out there. That's one problem. And they're really easy to access, right? You put down your credit card, but you generate your first video and suddenly you're like, shit, that cost me $20. I do think that's a real barrier, especially if you're not somebody that has a ton of, wealth lying around. It's really hard to just put your credit down like 100 different places, your credit card down like 100 different places. And then there's the second issue, for the consumer, where it's really hard to trust advertising right now. So I think that the only way, right? I think you're muted, Mark.
Sorry, fire
No,
department
it's
was
okay.
going by again. Yeah, I was saying how there's just a massive trust gap in a lot of those spaces and a
Yes.
lot of
Yes.
everywhere today. Yeah.
So, but I think your advice is sound, and I would add the following things. Like, so first of all, absolutely, if you're someone listening to this or you're just a person out there, you gotta play a little bit, but very much start with the smallest annoyances. And I think the times that I've been the most misled or disappointed myself in an application of AI have tended to be full outcome replacements.
Yeah.
That's how you raise from VCs, but that's not the stuff that's really changing, day-to-day workflows right now. So if you think about AI more like automation on steroids for the average person, I think
Yep.
you nailed it, Mark. Like, just fix the little things in the workflow and then start working up from there. But the thing I'd add on top of that is set yourself a budget, and just free your brain from thinking, am I really going to go in, $100 on this tool, $100 on this tool? Like, I think it really helps to put yourself sit yourself down and say in your own brain, I got $200 to play with AI this month. I just got to go do it. It's already lost, right? That money's already lost. Let me put my credit card down 4 places. I'm trying to automate this very small use case. Let me do that. And to be honest, at the level of a business, that is exactly what we did. Also, so the second flavor that I was mentioning was, I remember getting advice from a friend that's the CTO at a company called TRM Labs.
Okay.
And he said, we put down a KPI that said every person needs to try AI tools and automate 70% of their workflow by the end of this quarter. And, all bonuses and performance-based bonuses are all contingent on that.
Sure.
So I think whether you're a business or you're an individual, it's about setting aside budget, getting through in your head, like, this is something I have to play with. I'm not going to learn from the advertising what's good and what's bad. No one knows what's good and what's bad. And that's changed. And the racehorse is changing on a daily basis, what's the best and what's the worst. But you kind of got to get into the race and not be afraid of like standing on the, you don't want to be standing on the sidelines being like, I'll just wait until it all settles. Because there certainly are a lot of great applications out there, like you mentioned. Like note-taking apps, for instance, is like ubiquitous for a reason right now because no one wants to take notes. So yeah, great stuff. And I completely agree with your approach. And I would just add that, budgeting and kind of thinking about that is already sunk, and then playing with very small and kind of growing from there is the key, and never being afraid to keep messing around with new things.
100%. Yeah. And what are some things that you've learned when implementing either your product or some other sort of AI in your own business and workflows, things like that,
Yeah.
where it's led to some unforeseen challenges? And what were some takeaways and lesson learns that you might be able to share around that?
Well, Maro is a tiny company. So actually, I'm happy to be able to share some data from what I know is going on in the world because of our design partners and the CISOs and CIOs I work with. So I think the one massive, danger on the horizon is what I guess some people are calling shadow AI or shadow prompting. The idea here being people are playing, actually. The vast majority of people are realizing out there, hey, I tried Claude on this report that I have to do every week and I've never gone back. And I think if you're a security or IT leader, it's the tides are changing quickly. We're not having to say, hey, go mess around with new things. I think what's happening is a lot of users seeing marketing, seeing advertising, and going out and trying things, which I think is very natural. That's very good. We would call this person a star performer, right, at a good company. But
Sure.
I think the danger is starting to be, what are the actual risks to my organization when people are engaging with shadow AI? And I think the stat, there was a recent stat that said, I think Gartner said 80% of employees are already bringing some form of AI into their workplace that the CIO and the CISO doesn't know about. So one of the things I've tried to do in the past couple months is deconstruct what those dangers actually are. And I'm now thinking about them as maybe medium term and long term. There's two separate ones. And I'm curious for if this makes sense to you. I think the medium term risk is something like, well, there's two. There's supply chain risk. So previously we said, hey, I'm a real enterprise. I can't be working with companies that don't have a solid security posture. But now all these AI startups, as you mentioned, are coming out of the woodwork. And I think something like 60 or 70% of them have already been breached by attackers. So if I'm putting all my data into this AI startup that's only a month old, what protections do I have? What do I know about their security posture? They might be giving me the world. They might be, again, replacing all my BDRs. But if they have all my data and they get popped, what's going to happen to me?
Right.
And I do think that's really a danger right now. That's the short or medium term risk, is I guess just supply chain risk on steroids.
Yeah.
But there's another one that's actually happening at a user level, which is, I guess, hinting at early cognitive offloading. And I think this is something that's starting to come up a lot more often, right? And like New York Times will report on this, or Wall Street Journal will report on it and say, what's happening to our employees when you take a process that was literally run through Jadon's brain a month ago. But hey, ever since I started doing this in Claude, I'm no longer creating the monthly reports for my customers. They're just coming out. Maybe not that much is being lost in some use cases, but I think there are other use cases where we're going to look back, a year and go, oh my God, why did our quality change? Or, hey, does anyone know what's going on with this customer? No, not a single person in the company knows what's going on with the customer. Because we stopped looking at it. So I think those two, and I'll pause here. I want to talk about the long-term risk too, but I think those two are really the medium-term or short-term risks to an organization. Obviously, the impacts could be really financially heavy on the side where, as I mentioned, people are using tools and throwing all your data into them. Yes, models can train on that data, but the other impact is your customer data is just gone, leaked, or your IP. Yeah. What are your thoughts on those? Either those resonate with you?
I agree. I think that there's definitely a vulnerability for the companies that have AI products that, they should definitely be maintaining some sort of strict security, making sure that it's tight and siloed, as they say, right? So for the protection of that data. And I don't know how many of the companies are treating that like a super serious concern. I mean, they all say like, oh, it's, we definitely, maintain that, but I don't know how far they've implemented tools to actually make sure that, there are no hacks. And
it's as a startup, and you and I know this world really well, that's like a Series A concern. That's a Series B concern, right? To get a CISO and really focus on your security posture. I'm not saying that's how things should be, but certainly, security is not top of mind for a CEO who's suddenly making a couple $1 million from selling a new AI use case.
Yeah.
And so security, I think, is a major issue. And I think companies are really trying to figure out how to get a handle on all of this new stuff coming into their environment. And I'll save this for, maybe later down in this conversation, but like that's materializing in the form of governance committees. But, the committees can only really do so much before the question is like, we've designed all this, going back to earlier in our conversation, we designed all this policy, but is that what our workforce is actually doing? Like if I said, hey, employees, you're not allowed to use DeepSeek. You are allowed to use Claude. And hey, you're allowed to use ChatGPT, but only for these 5 use cases. Do I have any idea if that's being respected or followed at all?
No.
And I think that gap right there is a really, really massive one right now.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I definitely, it's truly the wild, wild west. And, it's like giving a teenager a cell phone or whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
they're even if it's against like the rules or something, they'll find a way around it, like
I think about this teenager one all the time because any child that's going through school right now that has access to an LLM is certainly cognitively offloading tasks. I saw an ad from Google yesterday from Gemini that said, "Hey, are you wondering why?" And it was not quoting Shakespeare, but it was saying, "Hey, were you wondering why Hamlet did this in Act 2, scene whatever?" Ask Gemini. And I was just thinking, without guardrails, you're really completely offloading the process of reading a text and trying to understand for yourself what's going on. So does there need to be both on the level of consumers or children in the education space or employees? What are those guardrails? Because otherwise, fast forward another year or two down the line, I think many organizations will realize, wow, shit, very little of our processes are being run by people, but not the way we imagined it in 2025 and 2024. We thought in 2024, we could decide what processes get automated and which ones don't. I think what's actually happening is a lot of people on their own deciding this tool is really good for me. I mean, it's the advice you and I are
Sure.
giving, right, on this podcast. We're saying figure out what works for you. And suddenly, what does that mean to the organization? So to answer your original question, I think that right there is a big reason a lot of our customers are working with us at Maro as well. Since you're telling our users what they what should and shouldn't be done, can you help us keep a handle on our AI governance posture itself?
Yeah.
And it's massive. This is a massive problem.
Yeah. And so what about in the workforce where there's the relationship of the AI and, think AI agents, right? And
Yeah.
and the human workers, because that's inevitable, right?
Mhm.
It's already in place, right? Like these
Right.
agents. And so how do you see that relationship evolving in the future?
Well, I think, yeah, it's a really, really good and scary question because I think the seeds at least in my industry, the seeds have already been planted on how are we securing agents and MCPs and, local code, local models that developers are running and, no one has access to see what's happening here. I guess I would say that I think that there's a whole new job. Maybe I guess jobs in the vague product sense is what I'm saying here, or like maybe marketing, like jobs to be done. There's a new job that I think is coming, and that job is about scoping what processes actually make a company go. And I guess one way to think about this, our company follows this book called Traction. It's just a really simple guide on how to build a sustainable company. And one of the things
Okay.
that it asks you to do is actually detail out all your processes and always keep a list of if the company died tomorrow, what are the things that would keep this company afloat?
Right, right. Like
And I
all
mean,
the SOPs, et cetera.
literally, yes. And as detailed as possible in the sense like literally you take this thing and you put it in this other tool and then you press pay or you know what I mean? Ideally, a company should be decomposable into processes, but I think a lot of the ways that some of the best companies in the world run right now is people doing really messy things. I don't even think that's good, right? We think that's good. Like innovation oftentimes comes from not following exact process. It comes from hiring smart people and letting them do whatever the hell they want to accomplish the job, to accomplish the mission. That being said,
Yeah,
okay, we have
enabling them. Sure.
enabling them, writing rules, but then saying, oh, you're a good cop, but you did things a little unorthodox this time, right? In the, in the TV show sense, that's the way the world works. I think with agents, we're starting to realize, well, an agent should only be able to do what the person who deployed the agent was already allowed to do. That's starting to become the way that at least my industry is talking about things, right? It's like, yeah, you can do whatever you want. You can deploy 10 agents, but Jadon, if your scope was you're allowed to pay bills personally, then should your agent be allowed to pay bills? Maybe. If we could say 100% we could secure that, then sure. But it shouldn't be able to do more than Jadon's able to do, right? And so I think one of the things that's going to necessarily emerge from this is not really thinking about people and agents that differently as it pertains to an organization. I think we're going to start thinking all of the AI stuff Mark runs, that's all Mark. And what is that stuff? And then also, let's go up a level at your department level. Is everyone running Mark-like things or is everyone running their own things? And that footprint looks really different from this footprint. And we don't really have people internal to an organization doing that. I don't know what to call it, archaeology, like forensics, classification. But like the longer term stability of a business, especially with agents, relies on you properly securing those things. So just to go
Yeah.
back to my original answer, it's really complicated, but I actually think at some point, I don't know if it's the security team or the IT team or HR or a combination of these groups that will start to really think about, here are the things that marketing does as a department. Here's the things that these roles in the marketing team do. And when things go out of those guardrails, are we concerned or are we not concerned?
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's the line between Mark's agent versus Mark. That's just going to be very difficult to question, right? Because you're going to be this
Yeah.
orchestrator. So yeah, that's a lot to do. But I just think it's going to be a brave new world of like, maybe one of the jobs you mentioned that would be created is something like this.
Yeah. No, I think it touches on the point of where, a few years ago, the role of CAIO was not a thing.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yep.
And then now, where if you think about any C-level historically, right, like they run a department, right? And so it's like that CAIO, runs a department. And so he or she has a team that is overseeing each of the other departments and, managing the AI that they're using from security bases or from revenue generating bases or from revenue retaining bases, the whole sort of thing. And so it's like, I foresee that department getting built out with humans, but then also like the agents. And so where the agents right now refer to one another and can pass off tasks, but then also thinking about it where like the agents could report to a head agent that the department CAIO department leader, right, is interacting more with. And so I've heard about that second part, model being kind of in consideration and the forethought of some industry leaders.
Right. Right.
But I definitely think that the CAIO and the I don't want to say like, well, maybe like just tech awareness or,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Just like that,
No, I do. Yeah.
the overseer taking on that role of things is going to be key. And it drills down to each individual maintaining that for their own integrity in their workspace. However, they're delivering said services, whatever their role is in their company. And then it rolls up kind of collectively into their hive so that everything is working efficiently and safely. And
yeah. I think you raise a good. I mean, this week I talked to an AI governance team, and these are all new. But this company had one for the last year and a half, so I'd say this is ahead of the curve, right? In terms of like really investing, but making sure there's good governance over your AI usage. And one of the things we were agreeing on together is the actual end state of how AI governance is going to look, or is AI governance just pushing a whole new way of understanding what good governance looks like broadly? And I think to your point, it's really the latter, right? Because the VC AIO right now, they have to do a lot. And it's like excavating the role as they're trying to act in it. And as they carve out responsibilities to the right and the left, I think, security fits into this picture. But as I said, also other groups too, IT, HR.
Oh, yeah.
And the question will be longer term, to your point. I think in the equilibrium, someone in this soup, in this amalgam, is going to be like, what I do is across human and non-human workers at this company, I'm able to show that we have good governance across all of these things. And just because you're this VCAIO, I think it doesn't mean you're just controlling the AI side. What Maro and we're partnering on with our design partners is like, humans are such a big part of this equation. They're not going away. How does the governance structure really think about both of those sides together as opposed to two separate issues to solve? So it's super interesting stuff. And I think your question is like, it's mind bending, and and we obviously don't have the answers, but I'm very excited to see how it goes.
Yeah. Time will tell for sure. Yeah. And as we wind things down, it's been warned that the college graduates these days are coming into a degree of, potential vulnerability around being the lost generation because of how much AI has kind of obfuscated some roles. And so what would you say to, those college grads that are coming out and at all hesitant in adapting AI, utilizing AI as they are just setting out in their careers, where maybe they had the idea in the past of, this school path of mine is going to lead me to a sort of career path, right?
And
And
then,
and now with things changing so quickly and dynamically, what would you, I don't know, consider yourself a keynote speaker, right, at their graduation or something, or coming into their classroom, okay, and giving them a little bit of advice of someone that's literally on the forefront of AI and the tech world.
yeah.
What might you advise them?
Well, so funny little plug. Actually, my co-founder Gwen and I will be speaking about this exact topic at UC Irvine early next month.
Okay,
So maybe we can include a link on what we end up discussing there. But as
100%.
a as a as a quick preview, I mean, I tend to be a little bit of a humanist and an optimist myself. I think that for really since the beginning of human history, we've been waiting for a technology that would allow us to free ourselves from the mundanity of some of these rote tasks. Like we're basically on a bike, producing, just like
Yeah,
we're on the hamster wheel, right? That's nowhere
yeah,
no one wants to be. The issue, I think, is even if AI can bring us that future, that the future we're looking for, where play is more important, where like you can use a lot of the skills that a college would teach you, I think it's being attacked right now, right? I think a lot of people are like, well, then why go to college if there's no jobs? I think this really needs to, or like, I would love for kids to bear in mind that the goal of education to start with was to build really well-rounded people, really well-rounded citizens that could benefit the people around them to the best of their ability. And we're all better for that, right? So I want to start by saying, I think that first we need to hold trust in the fact that education itself is good, that cognitive offloading is bad. And I think to then tie that to your future job prospects, Maro and startups are starting to hire smaller, very small teams of people who play, who know how to mess around with new things, who aren't scared of the cutting edge. But the core skill isn't, am I the best programmer in JavaScript, my senior year of college? It's about, hey, we're looking for like this outcome in the real world. We want to stop this particular kind of attack. And in high school or in college, you were already using AI to be able to start proof of concepting things that were like attacks that you were seeing local to your community or in companies that you worked at as an intern. And instead of seeing that as a weakness, you said, there's tools that help me really push myself to be able to solve at an outcomes level what the world is dealing with today. And I'll be like, I think the best data point to look at here is attackers are using AI. It's not like there's a lack of jobs on the other side. As long as attackers can spend a couple dollars to get a lot of dollars back, this job will exist.
Yep.
And so I think, yes, the economy is going through a lot of turmoil, and I'll just speak specifically to like tech and cyber people. But number one, I think don't lose the idea that education itself is useful. I think there will be a squeeze, but it's really important that you have the ability to use your brain. And then number two, and that's who we want to hire, right? And then number two
Right.
is we're really looking for proof of people that are not like, I did my course and I graduated. It's really about like what you did to play. It's, the fundamentals, because it's really, honestly, I mean, this could be a whole different topic. You also can't hire a junior engineer who doesn't know code well enough to debug, right? That's a whole
Right.
separate thing. But you have to be willing to play. And I think that starts from some of your earlier advice, Mark, and saying, just start. There's no better way to do it. Take a little project, take one pain point that you're dealing with in your communities, like literally what you live with on a daily basis. It could be your clubs, your neighbors, great IT
Yeah.
companies that started this way, and say, how can I use AI to solve that problem? And I guarantee that, I guarantee plus the jobs report that you were saying that things are going to shift a lot, but we're unable to imagine those jobs right now. And at least you will be really well positioned to be in that market as a really compelling candidate.
Wonderful. All right. So for those of you that can go to Irvine next weekend and see Jadon live and get to hear it all over again and probably in more depth.
Hopefully, sharper examples,
Yeah.
more evidence, some slides. Yeah. So,
Wonderful.
but thank you,
That's
Mark. Yeah.
great. Yeah, by all means. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jadon. This has been an absolute pleasure of mine. You're obviously, so many great adventures with your company and also just kind of, I love hearing the way that you think about this. You sound like a very conscious individual in the way that you're integrating AI into the human experience across the board. So I applaud you for your efforts there. And for the people that would like to learn more about you and Maro, how can they find you?
Oh man, we're so small right now. We can take direct emails, but you can go to our website first, seekmaro.com, seekmaro.com, or you can just email me at jadon@seekmaro.com. And the last thing I'll say, Mark, because this doesn't come up in the natural course of conversation, but the idea for Maro, because people often ask us like, why that name? It simply comes from,
Why the name Maro?
well, it's really simple. I think, like we said, we wanted to free people from the burden of thinking about cybersecurity, right? We wanted a guide of reason to fill in instead. And so we were really thinking about Dante's Inferno and who his guides were. So we're on a final list here of Beatrice, or if you know Virgil's full name, it's actually Publius Virgil Maro. So we've taken Virgil's name here, and yeah, we hope that at some point Maro is able to really lift that burden off of our users.
I love it. I love that tie-in. That's fantastic.
Awesome.
Good.
Thanks, Mark.
Show. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you again soon.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. This was really fun. I'll talk to you soon.